Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon, in fact. Mm, this is myself, Mohan Rangaswamaiah. Brief about me, I'll move on. So, it's as part of the agenda, what I have is an introduction of myself and what is GraphQL, Sitecore GraphQL, what is there for Sitecore GraphQL, some Sitecore prerequisites. So what all are the things which are required to set up this and start using GraphQL query and configure and test endpoints and query the APIs using GraphQL query and pros and cons. And also I have two more things which here is one the custom schema which I developed so that we can see. Also, there are like some additional endpoints Sitecore provides on top of the default master or whatever the endpoints. So that we'll see. So that's not included here. So and then followed by a Q&A. I'll try to limit to 1 hour, and if it is like 5 minutes here and there, please accept me. So I'll move on. Yeah, so brief about me, like Mohan, I work for Mindtree currently, as a technical architect, and I have 13 years of experience. I am certified in 9.0, 9.1, and MSTS, and this is where I try to be active and posting my articles in my blog. And moving on, hope you are able to hear me. I just wanted to confirm once, and before I start with the technical topic.
Yes, I'm able
Yeah,
to hear
Mohan,
you.
you're audible.
Yes, Mohan, we can hear you.
It's
Huh.
good.
Okay, so thank you. So let's see what is GraphQL. GraphQL is a query language. Again, with probably from SQL background, SQL background, whoever is coming. So we know like how do we query any database or any backend system and get the data. So this is also one of the query language, and GraphQL provides complete and understandable description of data in your API. So mainly GraphQL is for querying APIs. That's what they mention. So why they call as GraphQL is mainly query language for APIs is so different integration points are there where you will be able to query. Just I wanted to present one screen here, just explain. So this is how actually when it comes to production, we'll be using GraphQL query as a in a middleware in terms of from the front end. Like I have different clients here, like either mobile or desktop or tab. So all requests will be reaching GraphQL, and the query language GraphQL for query language for API, why they call is it integrates into, it queries internally into it has the capability of querying different endpoints. Like you can query flat files, you can query different again an SQL database and get the data. You can query a RESTful service or microservice which is hosted somewhere and get the data. And we can also query like CMS like Sitecore or any CRM system, in fact, can query and get the data and give that data as a merged one response into client side. That's what they call this GraphQL as a API query language. And this is where is mostly picking up the pace. So like usually when we call any query, so or any request to the backend, so usually we will be issuing one query and that goes into the backend and gets the data. So that will be one cycle of request. So the same way, if you want to query any other database or any other endpoint where we need the data, we will have to issue different queries or server requests. So that is with GraphQL in presence, like this will hide all these complexities. So you request whatever the data you need internally. So it is there are like GraphQL clients where they can manage this multiple queries into one single response, one single request and response, and give you the results. So that is what they call as GraphQL for query language for APIs. So, and it gives power to ask exactly what you need and nothing more, nothing else. Like we'll see like how we can query only what is needed and nothing, anything which is not needed, no overfetching here are required. It is designed to support the need of front end. Again, like you can make the query from the front end technology, either React or Angular JS or any other front ends. And strongly typed, self-documenting. We'll see like when it comes to custom schema, we'll see this self-documenting, how it is enabled. So bandwidth efficient, yes, since we make one query or one request to the backend, so it is bandwidth efficient and gets the data required. And easy real-time data. There are some GraphQL subscriptions which is supported on GraphQL. So that gives the real-time data. We can look into many of the events. So that is where the last point mentions. And when it comes to GraphQL, Sitecore GraphQL API, so Sitecore has now integrated this runtime as part of the JSS, Sitecore JSS. So now we need not have to worry about configuring all these things. So some configurations we need to enable this query language on Sitecore. So this is coming as part of the Sitecore JSS package which we install. Sitecore is a Sitecore GraphQL API is generic GraphQL GraphQL service platform. It's wrapped on top of the Sitecore server. So it hosts your data that whatever the CMS data which we have, along with the custom databases or custom repositories, that also can be hosted on this, and we can issue query against it and get this. API supports real-time data that is through subscriptions. Get a GraphQL by installing JSS server components. As I mentioned, it's already integrated into Sitecore through JSS server component. So when we install server JSS component, it will be there, but we need to do minor configurations to enable it. And GraphQL does not have any GraphQL endpoints defined default. Yeah, so GraphQL by default, post installation, it will not be enabled. We have to make minor, configuration changes. So yeah, so we to query the CMS data or Sitecore data using GraphQL, we need to enable one of the endpoint, at least one endpoint. Yeah, what is part of prerequisites? What are required as part of the GraphQL? I need to run the GraphQL query. So Sitecore 9.0 or later is required. So post below that, our lower versions are not integrated with it. So Sitecore JavaScript component. So you can check with the compatible version, whatever you are running, and have this GraphQL and JSS component installed, and so that will come up. That will install the compatible version of GraphQL runtime. And required settings. So one is on the web config, we have to make a debug equal to true, and that is if you have already running a JSS application. In order to do properly, you would have taken care of that as part of your JSS enabling. And make sure that you allowed. Yes, this is also part of JSS. If you already have JSS application, you would have allowed the allowed controls are star to allow all the cross-domain requests, and you would have also created an API. Otherwise, if you are configuring for the first time, you need to take care of these three things. Yeah, so after that, like the subscriptions we talked about earlier. So for subscription, there is one more setting which is required here. We need to enable the WebSocket, protocol in IIS. So that is, if we want to run the subscriptions, we have to enable it. Just wanted to take you through that. Okay. Mm. Yeah, so it's here. So it's when you go to Windows, turn on features. I am in control panel and program and features. So I'll expand IAS, in IAS services here, and I'll go to WW web services here for the IAS. And this is where the WebSocket protocol is. We need to check it and enable it. So post this, it kind of installs the required softwares, and we have to restart the IAS. So that is one thing which is required. I've enabled this, and I'll go back to the presentation. Yeah, so one that is part of the subscription enabling. So if you need to run any subscriptions and hook into any of the item added or item a different event, so you can enable that. So how to set up GraphQL, we'll see quickly. Step by step, I have documented it here. So as mentioned, it's a part of the JSS package after the installation. So after the installation, you can open, Sitecore content editor and have this API key. So then enter the mentioned, yes, I'll just jump back to the browser to show you how to enable it. So sorry that. Huh. Here, if you see, I've installed this one, and I'll go and under system there is settings. Under settings there will be services, and here is the API key. So we need to, if not created already, you need to create. Sorry, right click here and create the API key using this API key template, which is provided by JSS package installation. And I just wanted to show you what are the configurations which are there. So this is the API key which is required. I think mostly it will be one API key per installation which is required. I've not seen any requirement of generating multiple API key unless there is a need. So we need to have this item ID. This is going to be serving as our API key. And as part of the fields, so we can allow specific cross origins if you know the domains. Like these are the cross domains which I want to allow only this. So then you can allow that. Also, you can enable particular controllers as well. You can mention, so allow only these controllers and mention that. And you can also secure this using some impersonating the user, particular user. So any GraphQL query can be secured in two ways. One is the mentioning the API key in the query, and the other way is also impersonating one of the user where the GraphQL portion is allowed to query. So only that user will be authenticated and allowed to authorized and allowed to access this query data. So this we can if we, for the demo purpose, I have allowed all the controllers, and this one I'm not mentioning. So this impersonated users, and there is one setting which we need to go through. I'll take you through that in the configuration for the security. And yeah, so as part of the my installation, I'll just want you to see this two configuration which we need to enable. Post installation, we'll go to debug, web config, and enable the debug part here. Compilation. So check here whether this is already enabled or not. So if not enabled, we may make it true. So this is one of the requirement there, and I'll close that. And when jump back to the same this one, and let's go to configuration. and here Sitecore as part of the JSS package installation, it will create the services.graphql. So this folder configuration will be created. By default, like I mentioned, this endpoints are not allowed here. So there will be two endpoints by default. One is master and one for web config. So like that, like web, it will be like disabled. So I have enabled it. So you just enable by removing the dot example. Let's see here what is that. Here I have one endpoint. So this is for the context database. So like master database, and it queries me the master database items from Sitecore. So this is one of the schema, one of the endpoint. Sorry. So this is one of the endpoint, and I have another one. So I'll show you one more when we come to custom schema enable custom schema which I coded. So that we'll see there, and that is where we need to enable that. Other setting is so we need to configure security points here. One, whether you require you need to authenticate your queries, GraphQL queries. So if yes, make it true, and you provide the impersonation user here. As I mentioned, you have to provide, if you enable that to true, you have to provide the particular user where it authenticates or impersonates and queries the data. Otherwise, you can make it false, and you can enable this, and you can authorize your queries and authenticate using API key. So the API key is this item ID. So this is the item ID we can copy, and we can issue the queries against our GraphQL query. So these two are the settings, three are the settings which are required. And apart from that, so API key we saw, cross origin calls we saw, and setting this impersonation user we saw. And the other part is enable this master config for our endpoint. So that also we saw. And so this is going to be and so opposed these steps, like fifth step, sixth step is to, like, we can query using by substituting our domain, and we can use this API to query the GraphQL Sitecore data. So here I'll go jump back to the browser here, and so what we do is with whatever the domain I have. So this is the current domain here as with Sitecore /API /graph items /master. So master is my current context, and UI. So this much is till for the domain endpoint, and for the UI, if you type UI, so this will enable Sitecore Graph browser for writing my query, validating, testing against that query. So this enables Sitecore has provided out of the box this graph Sitecore Experience Graph browser. So if you type any endpoint and you /UI, uh, it will give graph browser. So so for just in case of one more endpoint which I have defined, that is movies /UI. So this will give me the another custom schema defined API and GraphQL browser for it. So this will only query this schema data. So that is particular to only this particular movie schema data. So we'll see that. So as of now, till this brings me the GraphQL browser where I can write my query, test it, validate it, and then I can take this query either we'll go to different modes of execution of GraphQL query and we'll test this. So after this question mark, like I have to pass this query string API key, Sitecore SC API key, SC underscore API key. So I had to post this. I copied this from the GraphQL content editor API key item ID. So this gives me the ability to issue query to my Sitecore instance here. So I can execute this query. So what it does is, so if first time it will take some time to execute, and we will see like how it caches these queries in the master database. So when we go to one of the additional endpoints item, so there we'll see how it caches this. Suppose this, it will be faster actually. So this brings our first query to graph against my Sitecore instance. So like we can type. So here this query is called in operation type. So the query keyword is operation type, and we can issue query. So it gives all the uh, available querying items for this schema. So like item, I can mention, and I can issue. I can get the name, I can get or path of the item, all those things, whatever is allowed as part of this schema, it will give me the kind of a typing or intelligence we can call. So that it gives. So this is my first query. Any questions so far? Suppose that I'll go to execute some other sample queries, and we'll see the anatomy of the query, each query, how that is formed and operation types. Any questions? I just wanted to see if there are any questions so far.
Mohan, no, we don't have.
Okay, so I'll move further. So this is the first query we see. So I'll jump back to my slide here. So this is the way where we enable this endpoint and query against our Sitecore instance. And yeah, so as part of their documentation, always they market it as world's best select statement. So why they call as like the world's best select statement for any GraphQL query is like there is, so you will be enabled from you will be enabled from talk to your backend from the front end directly, and also you can modify your query anytime, like without any code deployment, anything which is required either. So what at most is required, you have to change the GraphQL query here in your graph browser, and you can take it, and either you can deploy it from the from the front end, or you can have this HTTP request in your as part of an AJAX call or a HTTP request, and you can directly query this. You can issue this query directly without much of the code change from the server side. And it is also performance enabled, so better than REST APIs, and they call it as. And also, like we saw how we can query multiple endpoints, and how we can query multiple data sources and get the data. So that's why they call as world's best select statement. And this is, so till this we can see the API in API key. Post that, it will appends the query what we have, whatever we are we are going to write. So that is the structure of this HTTP endpoint. But there are multiple ways of calling this one. We'll go through that. For now, I'll jump back to presentation. And yeah, so this is a way of querying we saw. And running simple query, we'll see. First, we saw that, and we can pass path also. So as part of this example, I have passed path. So here you can So here you can pass the item path here of your item here. Let me see, path colon. So, slash home. So this I can pass and get the name of the item which is there on that path. So that is enabled here. And yeah, as part of this, so we'll see next, anatomy of what is there as part of this query, and then we'll jump back to the demo queries, whatever I am planning to execute here. Here, a GraphQL query has its own syntax. So it has its syntax. Request and responses are of the same shape. If you see this request, almost it's same type. So this is optional. We will see how this is optional, and this query operation type, what they call. And there are different operation types. We'll see that. So if you see this one, except this data, the response is almost predictable as part of a request and the response. So it has the similar structure, and this almost looks like a JSON data. So query looks like a JSON data and the response as well. A simple anatomy of this query, if you take, so these are called fields. So including the item name, path, display name, ID, and one more argument, one more specific or special thing here is you can pass the argument to your field as well. Here, this format, colon n says that I need the ID in numeric format. So you can issue the same thing. You can have one example, I think, how we can get the template and its own field, not the inherited field. That kind of query also we can issue. And it takes path as argument here. So these are all fields, and these two are arguments here. So specific thing, we can pass the arguments to fields as well. An example of GraphQL query is again, so this is, as I mentioned, there's operation type, and there are in the operation types we have query and mutation, subscription, and fragments. I think these are 4 types. And operation, so this is name. So it's optional again. We can give, or we can need not have to give, but it's better to have this operation type. So when we use this, query operation name, when we use this in production environment, so this query can be identified uniquely, and it can be debugged later. And this variable definition. So you can pass the variables as your, you can define variable of different data types, and you can pass that through your parameters. So this is the format is dollar symbol, then this is the variable name. Context item is the variable name, and the type of the variable which it accepts. And this exclamatory mark, mentions that this parameter is mandatory, is not optional. We need to pass that parameter while calling this query. Otherwise, it will complain. So if we omit this, exclamatory mark, so we can either pass or ignore that. It will take whatever the null, I think it will take. So this is simple anatomy of this particular query is what we saw. So here some examples I'll jump in here. Running multiple queries, as I mentioned, so we can run single query, as well as you can include multiple queries. So it's called query batching is what the specific word they call, and you can issue as many query as possible and get the detail. But only thing is, it should not be too complex queries. Otherwise, there is a mechanism in Sitecore where it enables either in Sitecore. It is not. I'm not sure whether it is enabled as part of the Sitecore or GraphQL. So if it is, if a query is too complex and it takes too much of time, this GraphQL mechanism is says that it gives error. So it will not go and take that and keep running this query. So we'll see that as part of the demo, I've just copied some of the ready queries. So here I have this queries ready. So I'll take this one of the example and these examples and run it in the browser. And I'll be explaining this. So here I want item 1. I'm passing one of the path for different path and getting the so sorry, not executed. Yeah, so this is the item 1 and this query is one query. Sorry, one specific query taking the path 1, and the second query is taking the path 2, and it is giving different results if you see. So this is where the graph structure comes into picture. Like either you can query one field or 10 fields here, it doesn't matter. So like you need not have to be like in SQL, you need not have to be aligned to same structure. It's kind of you can issue and you can issue different field level query as well again. So this is part of multiple queries, and I'll just jump back to one more example. So retrieves an item and its children to its template definition in single query. Here so need not have to be a content item. This query is specifically prepared for like just to demo it. It is queryable even your template or any of the data in Sitecore. So based on as part of the schema, whatever it is defined here. So we can query even templates, and I think you can renderings and all those almost all the data which is there as part of the Sitecore, which is hosted on the Sitecore CMS. So here what I'm getting the templates data, and I'm getting its ID, path, and whatever the children which are there as part of that this templates. So what are all the different types of templates and its field as well. Each template fields as well I'm getting here. So this way we can query even the templates or renderings or any other data which we need, any specific data, and you can fine tune to get even a single field as well. You need not have to fetch entire item and then get like unlike in REST API, like we query if we need a user profile data, like we need to issue the query against a user ID. It will fetch all those user profile data as part of the entire data definition. So here is not the case. Like if you need user profile, just name of the user profile or age of the user profile or date of birth of the user profile, you can query only that and get only that required response. So that is a specific speciality of GraphQL. And here, yeah, so you can pass the parameter as well. Like I'm passing two parameters here, and so I'm issuing two query and passing two different parameters. So we can, this is enables here, like I mentioned, this is the operation type, and path 1 which is a variable, string variable, which is required variable here, and language, you can pass the language of a particular item and get that particular language content. And you can also pass the version information, like I want the version 2 for this item, or the otherwise by default I am we'll see, as I'm not mandating this variable. We'll see it what it gets. It always try to get the latest, else you can pass the parameter and get particular version of that item. And the part 2 also I can pass. I can pass a part 2 for the second query, and also language version, the language parameter. So here this is the query pan, and this is the result pan, and we have a query variable pan as well, where we can pass the variable and test it, test this query whether it's working or not. So, and we have also like a documentation. I'll come to this part later. So as part of this query, I have this variables typed here. So I'll just pass in. So here I can pass the parameter. Here also you can see the IntelliSense available. You can say like so whatever the IntelliSense which you need, like I need the path one, I can type in path one, and post that it will give me what are all the other parameters which are there. So if you see the language path, language one, language two, and those things are there. And I think version also will come. Yes. So version path also will there. So that's how it is enabled with the IntelliSense. You can type easily for developer friendly. So here I'm passing for the query one, I'm passing path one, and the language as JAJP, that is Japanese language. I'm asking for a particular version of the item here. And for the second query, I'm passing different path, and the language is English. Either if it is a not mandatory one, we can omit this part and see. So first, let me execute this and get the results. So if you see the home item for the first query, it is giving me, and so if it is not having JSJP version, I think it is not going to give me. It is going to give me the default one. So we can see that we can enable a language version and get the data, and also I can so I can pass the particular version of the of this item and get that. Yeah, I think version one as the Japanese version, so that's how it is giving me the different results here. Version two is not having the Japanese version here, I think. So that's what we can get a particular language version of data. And the second query also gives me its own set of data as part of the query. I can omit this language and still I be able to get the data, I think. Yes. And I can omit this version as well. And I think I'll be getting the default one, whatever last time which we got. So I think it is part of this one. It's, yeah, comma is required there. Yeah, I think default latest version it is giving me. So and apart from that, one more thing what I want to tell you is if you are not using any of this, or if you are making any mistake, it will start complaining here. Like if I say I've used declared that variable and I'm not using that, it will start complaining here. Here itself while typing it, it's strongly typed. That's why it is called strongly typed, and it will give then and there the error. Apart from that, documentation. So if you click on here or over here, I'll just undo it. So you can get it the documentation here as well. Don't know why that is not coming here. So you can go hover over here and get it particular documentation related to here. And this is the document panel. It's whatever the definition or whatever the item which is allowed, or what are the fields which are there. So all those things will be provided here itself. So which is a developer friendly documentation which is from GraphQL. So here you can get, so as part of the item, what all is exposed as part of this schema. So that is what it gives. Also the different implementations also will get here. There are default implementations where we have this schema. So those, schema, documentation is panel will get all this documentation. And I'll move on. For a search query, I think whatever search queries which we are building as part of the Solar and all, we will be able to query from the UI itself now. We need not have to have that as part of the as part of the C# implementation. Of course, this search indexing is required as part of the Solar. But I think for the querying, we can use GraphQL. So this is enabled with the different parameters. Even we can pass the different index names. All those things are there. I think let me go and just paste it here and just execute. So it is saying search keyword is invalid. Yeah, I'm not passing that. That's why it is complaining. And one more specific thing which I wanted to show you is it gives the error here itself. So you can read what is particularly going wrong. And one more thing is for any query, it will give me 200 actually. So that is one thing which we'll talk about later. So it is a disadvantage little, in terms of when we are reading particular status code, HTTP status code, one thing which we need to take care is this one. Whenever this either executes successfully or not, so it will return 200 if you are subscribing to HTTP status code. So that is one thing which I wanted to let you know. Apart from that, I'll just run this query and we'll see like how do we query different with different parameters with here in search. So this query I'm issuing against a particular, I think it's still an error. Let me check for a different keyword. Okay. Okay, don't what is that? Let me type in here. So okay, search. So you can pass the parameters here, like what is the keyword or what is the whether it is after like top 10 or what you used to pass in SQL. Those facilities are there, like first 10 queries or first 10 results, or after skipping first after 10, so you give me that result. So this gives me the first and after will give that facility. So let's say first 4 or 3, then we can say like keyword what and all keyword we need. Say like for now I'll query it here itself. I'll say sample, and we have different other parameters. You can say pass the language as well as for field equals to and latest version. All those things are there. So we'll see simple query here and item. Yeah, results, and then I can pass the item here. Items, then I have to query against. So name of the item, path, and template name and ID we can get. So we'll just execute this one and see. Not sure why this is going wrong. Okay, so we'll come back to that. It's giving me error. Still, it's not executing the search. Let's see. So I'll move on to next query. So there are like other types which I mentioned. No, the query types are the operation types. So that is one of them is mutation. Mutate is to edit or to create a new item. So mutate, the word is like make changes. So mutation is either create or you can update the existing item. So we'll see one of the example, and we'll see one of the example of updating this existing item, and also subscription we'll see, and one of the real-time query where navigation items, how do we fetch a navigation item for any particular site. So that we'll see as part of the examples. I think that's all I have as part of the example. So let's see how do we mutate or create an item using the GraphQL in the Sitecore. So this is the template ID which I have taken. I think let me verify this first. So this is the template ID I'm passing. Create item of so this is what says create item, and here we can check the documentation as well. Create item, I'm passing the name of the item, what its parent item, under which item I have to create this item. That's what we pass. And the template using which item, which template I have to create the this item. Also fields, what are all the fields I need to include, or not fields, the text content, what and all content which we need to. So this is the name of the field, and what is its content, and the language also, and different options, other options are there which we can verify. So I'll just go and check this quickly, whether this template, what type of template is this. I think it's sample item, then so and under which item it has to create the item. I think mostly home I would have typed. Let's see. Yeah, so we'll create one item here using this query. So I think it's created this item, and let's see, search by this ID. Yeah, I think just now it is created this item using mutation. So we can check whether it's having this. Yes, the same content which we pushed from here. And let's see whether it is really created here. Yeah, I think it's at the same time. It's now created using this query itself. So this is one of the type, and you can also have update this item. So the next example is that. So you can update any particular item which is created, which is existing. So I'm just mutating and putting some different item. Let me see what is there as part of the item sample 4. Sample 4. So what is there? Mutated now sample item is there. Let's change the content. So let's see, for item 4 we'll issue, and we can issue that query. So it is updated that item, and I'll just refresh this item. Yes, so this is how we can edit this content or mutate the content using mutation operation type. So those two are the examples with respect to mutation type, and subscription is another type. So where we talked about and enabled the web socket protocol, and we also talked about what all the events which we can subscribe to. So that we'll see what is there as part of the subscription here, as part of the documentation. Subscription. Subscription has item added event, and I can subscribe to that. I can subscribe to item deleted event, and item saved, and item publishing status is what this is as part of this schema. It's allowed. If you want more kind of this we have to this kind of subscriptions, we have to define the custom schema code against C# and include that as part of this. And also there is a custom schema extension also. You can provide write the extension for this subscription. Also include different subscription against this schema as well. So that facility is available in Sitecore GraphQL. And so this is locally it's not working for me. It is giving me some it's error. Usually when I create the item here, so it are whatever what schema is this? Yeah, item added event. So whenever I create an item added, it actually should give me the ID, name, path, and its template here. But for some reason, it is giving me error actually. What it says is, so it is actually when it is executing, some WebSocket error is coming and says that this is already, we are looking into this event when the say event is already passed, some error is there in my system, and this subscription is like some conditions are there. I just wanted to let you know. So it needs the Windows 10 and above, I think, and Windows 12 and for server or other conditions are there. And and one more thing is you have to enable your WebSocket. Maybe some port may be related, that also we need to check. So I'm not able to execute this on my local system. And so moving on, as part of this subscription, this is there. So this is one of the real-time query which I've written for navigation for another application. Just we'll see as part of the item service API. So I think this is the one. No. Yeah. So yeah, this is where I have put this query, and this is returning the result as part of the JSON item service. Sorry, layout service API. So this I have embedded against particular component, JSON component. So JSON rendering component. So this is a JSON rendering which I created using in the Sitecore instance using JSON rendering template, and I have appended this query. So this is kind of integrated mode. So we'll see two modes of executing these queries. So one of them is integrated mode, and this is how we'll put this query, whatever the query which you have written here. As part of the GraphQL, XGraph browser, so you have to paste your query here, whatever is against which you tested here, and then you use this component against any of the item. So this is the rendering which I have defined, and I think I have used this one against this site. I hope. Let's see. Against this site, this page, I have used this component. So let me see the presentation. So this is the integrated mode of executing this GraphQL query, where you paste the GraphQL query which is tested, and you include that GraphQL rendering, JSON rendering on any of the item, and execute the or render that page. It will be rendering. But of course, to append or render this layout service data, we need a React component. So which is not yet done from my part. So here this is included, and we'll see as part of the item service. And what I'm doing here is I'm executing nav test here. So I'm passing this, and I'm passing this API key. So this is apart from GraphQL. So just I'm rendering layout service API. It's not GraphQL API here. So I'm passing the item nav item, and I'm getting this results here. So this is the results where it has all the navigation with respect to different conditions which I have written here. So if you see this query, so I'll just go and paste this one. I think I need to have this. So it is API slash graph slash item slash master slash UI. So let's see. But it takes some time. I think whenever it opens, we'll test this navigation query. And I'll jump back to my presentation. So it's 1 o'clock almost. So I have some more slides to present. So bear with me. So these are the queries which we saw, and API documentation we see, like documentation explorer is equally important here for development perspective. It is auto-generating API documentation. We'll see when we go to custom schema. So I have written one custom schema and it is self-documenting itself. I have not written any documentation there. We'll see that. And it enables a developer to understand the syntax and other things, what is allowed as part of this. I think we saw this. So here two modes of executing this any of your GraphQL query. One is integrated mode. We just saw that, and we'll execute that query and see where we will append this query against JSON rendering. So this is integration part, and the connected GraphQL query is what we saw in the graph browser. Also, there are other way of querying that. So JSS app makes the direct HTTP request. Either we can pass this, we can pass this GraphQL query directly into your API, the React API, or there is another way which we'll see. So either you make a direct query or you pass that as part of the a way of loading jQuery separately. GraphQL query separately. I have one example. So though it's not running here. So this is how a React component looks like in real time. And what we use is a GraphQL macro we load as part of the npm node package. And that loader, using that loader, I'm loading this query. This query is here itself in the folder. I can probably go to that folder as well. Yes, so this is one of the JSS component. So primary navigation, here is my query which I have written, and I have opened that one here. So this is on the navigation query, and so this is how you load the query, GraphQL query in real time. Or you can paste if you do not want to use this all these things. So you can paste directly your query and execute and see. So wherever this data is there, no, so you can paste against this variable, you can paste that query and execute this. And in real time, this is how we load that and have these properties loaded into data, and we are querying against that data. So data.children and build navigation is a new method here, so that it is using that data or items and then querying and binding against that React component. So this is one of the connected mode of execution of this GraphQL query. So I'm moving on. GraphQL query schema. So currently what we queried against is the out-of-the-box schema, content schema, what it was there as out-of-the-box as part of the JSS package installation. We can also define and extend the schema, define the new schema, and query against it. We'll see one of the example. And so GraphQL, you use a schema to describe the shape of your data, like what and all is allowed as part of the schema. You can limit the number of fields, queries as part of this schema, all these things, custom schema. So schema defines hierarchy of types, like we see, like how it hierarchy, builds the hierarchy. First item, then it's fields, then it's inherited fields, all those things. The schema also specifies exactly which query, which queries and mutations are available as part of that schema. And the schema provider in Sitecore, there are schema providers where you have to inherit and define your own self-defined schema. So one of the example is I just think I need to open the Visual Studio. Yeah, so let it open. By that time, I'll just demo this custom schema which is built. So here I have company. So this is custom schema actually, and this documented as I mentioned. So the self documentation facility which I mentioned is I have not written any of these documentation for my custom schema. It is reading my C# code or whatever the custom definition which we provide, and it will construct this self documentation. And this is the schema name. The company is the name of the current schema, and it is what all it's allowed as part of this custom schema. So you can query name is allowed. What I have coded is against name, ID, and log path, and I think origin, country. Yeah, so these are the as part of my company schema. So these are there as part of this schema. So let's see, execute and see. And we can get this documentation as well. So if you see, so this is part of my coding. This it is picking, and it is picking my as part of my coding, like whatever the custom schema I've coded. So it is automatically picking this documentation. These are the 4 fields which are there as part of the schema and allowing you to query. And this is the result of that, the custom schema which I have written. Sorry. So let's go to this. So here, this schema provides, there are 2 schemas I have written. I think 3 have a custom schema I have written. So here is the custom schema which I queried against. So it inherits from schema provider. I think I'll take another 7 minutes. I think I'll be able to conclude. I hope you're okay with that. So this is the schema which I am inheriting, and the name of the custom schema is this production company schema provider. And there are like small coding which is required again to enable this. So I just coded for the sample. I just pushing the data from here, and usually it will be either from your custom DB or an API or against any file type, an XML file type. So this is where I was mentioning in this picture. You can query against different modes or different APIs. So you can define that schema and query against it. And this is one of the GraphQL, the way it converts this repository into the GraphQL way of querying. So this is the code actually. So I'll not spend much of time. So probably if you need, I can send this code as well. And let me go. And this is where my data is coming. Whatever I have populated here, that as part of that custom schema, it is giving me this. And let me go back to my presentation. I think 2-3 more slides are there. Yeah, so we saw this custom schema, and yeah, there are like default endpoint we saw is master and the web which are there. GraphQL also, our Sitecore GraphQL provides this extra endpoint, additional endpoints for our validation purpose and checking purpose. Like one schema slash schema, if we put instead of after UI, instead of UI when we use the browser master/UI. So instead of that, you can put that schema and gets what slash schema does is it dumps all the schema which is there as per what we have written as part of this Sitecore. So it dumps into this in a format called SDL. Format, that is schema definition format. Stats will give me the basic statistics. What is this performance? Whether this queries whitelisted or not, cached or not, that it will give me. And it slash cache will give me whether how many queries are cached. Here, when we execute a query against MasterDB, it will cache this. So we'll just see the example here. I think I opened this. So here, I'll come back to this. I wanted to demo the navigation query. I'll come back here. So schema, if you execute this, no, so it will give me all the schema definition, including the custom schema, which are defined here. So it will give me all the details. You can read through all the details, what is there as part of the custom, or as part of the out of the box, as well as custom schema. I think still loading. Then we have one more. I think next tab is what is there as part of this. All I post. Yeah. So this is stats. Whatever the query which I have executed, and so it gives me the data about these queries. How is the performance, or whether this is cached or not, or whether it's whitelisted or not. There is a whitelist facility for your query where to improve performance. If you know already this query needs to be whitelisted, you can whitelist in the configuration. And there are like 16 cached queries are there, and against each query it will give some stats. And cache/cache will give me like so Sitecore has provided this facility where whatever the query which we again execute against master, this will cache this. So of course this again, when we again execute this one against web, I think we need to have some other mechanism, some Apollo client mechanism to cache these queries. I think it is not out of the box in the web. And let me query. Yeah, so this is my custom schema query which I added, and that data will be here in the schema. So I'll not spend much of the time here. So I'll move on. Yeah, brief differences which I already mentioned. So here, when you want to query against a particular endpoint, you have to define each endpoint and query against. So in GraphQL, you can have one single endpoint and query against multiple data sources or multiple APIs. So that is where this majorly scoring, GraphQL is scoring against REST. Overfetching and underfetching in REST. So like the example which I gave in the user profile case. So I need to get entire tuple of the data instead of a particular field. So in case of REST. So in case of GraphQL, it will give me a facility to query whatever required field. If date of birth is required, I can query only date of birth out of that tuple. And multiple versioning. So when you upgrade or when you create different versions, or have one more overridden version of this REST APIs, those things you need to create. No versioning required in case of GraphQL. You just need to change the data and change the query and issue that against your front end. So that is only required. That's a required change. A difficulty in understanding a bit unless your coder or a developer has enough comments. So in REST, it will be difficult to understand unless. So and self-documented, we saw that. So for each of my query, I can get what is this variable, or what is this field, or what is this supported as part of this. So quickly move on. And pros, I think being less talkative, that means we can issue multiple queries against one request we can issue. Good fit for complex systems where you have multiple system to talk to. So that is where the current trend is, like when you have different microservices, different REST API or MongoDB or any flat files. So this is where it best fits. Fetching data with single API calls, yes, we saw that. Overfetching, no overfetching, we saw that. Tailoring request to as per the need. So just now I mentioned, like you can even issue a query against one particular field and get that. Validation, we saw that, and as part of the development, it will give then and there the validation. Auto-generating API documentation. When we create any custom schema, it auto-generates that documentation. APL evaluation without versioning. There's no versioning required unless you modify this and just update your query file. Then that's it. So you can have multiple. You can have that changed there itself. Self-documented. We saw that. Performance, yeah. So some of the cons of this are disadvantages. We see like some of the performance issues which I mentioned earlier, like if it is a very complex query and if it takes long time, the Sitecore or GraphQL has a mechanism to reject these queries. So and that is not best fit for unless if it is a very complex query. And so for a small application, I think we need not to have this unless there's a mechanism like where we need nested data. Web caching complexity is we need to go with Apollo client, and even file uploading Apollo GraphQL we need to go. Query is always returns HTTP 200. We saw that. So irrespective of the success or not, we saw that it is returning success code. Takes a while to understand bit, like community is growing, and as soon as we get into the usage, probably will understand that more. So those are the part of the cons which I have. So before I go into, just we'll see one of the execution which is pending here. So I'll just query this. I think I will be able to execute this. API key is required. API keys. So I have that. So I think API key is required. I can copy that unless it is open. So API key. I thought we can pass it. Let's see. Underscore query. See API key. I can put that one. This will see execute the sense. Okay.
ID is missing. Yeah.
I think yes. Sorry. I think it is wrong. Yeah, I think those are the things which I had. Let's see it executes. And so these are the my contacts. And if you have any questions, you can ask me. Sorry, I've taken but 15 minutes more. So it was 1 hour plan, 1 hour session. You can ask me if there is any there are any questions which I can answer.
Mohan, just like one thing, that GraphQL is also based on indexing, or it's a directly hitting to the database to get the data?
So here actually it is now querying against content, but in case of search they say like you can there is an option to mention the index. So in case of search, but this one will query against the content tree only. It's not going to
Okay.
go for any indexing.
Okay. So just in terms of Solar query, how it's a differentiate with that exactly? We can use it instead of Solar query, this one.
Solar query, Solar, we need it for, anyway, it's not replacement for the Solar query. But
Okay.
yeah, so Solar is required for as part of the indexing, but querying is enabled as part of this search, search option what we have here. So I don't know whether that is going to be a replacement of the search, Solar search or Azure search. And but mostly it will be like you can query you can query and search against anything here. So if you see the search, no, so you can query and almost search anything as part of whatever is allowed here. So if you go to the documentation, there is option to specify the index as well. Huh. So these are the options, like you can get whatever the number of items or whatever. The root item, you can query, the one advantage here, you can query against particular root, only that search you can, limit it to particular item and item under it. Then keyword you can pass anyway. The language you can specify, latest version, all those things are in the web, it may not make sense. Index is one thing where you can mention that the search index name to query default to the standard index for the current database, that is master index it will go, but otherwise you can mention the index. But I'm not seeing that as a like an alternative to Solar, but unless we see some usages in real time, but not implemented in real time, and saw that whether we can replace this search query as part of instead of Solar.
Okay, just one last thing, like as you have
Yeah.
shown one demo, like we have created a Sitecore item using the GraphQL query, right? So the same thing we can also do with the Sitecore API, the default one. We can create an item using the C# code, right? So just I want to understand like what is the difference between these two approach, like why we use GraphQL and like what is the benefit of using this one. So just I need to understand this point as well.
The mutations you are saying, mutation and subscriptions.
Yes, mutation like creation or updation, that item we have done it here, and the same thing we can do through the Sitecore API. So just know the difference exactly.
So here, what they usually, I saw one of the video where one of the guy is developing some chart application in the front end itself.
Okay.
Like you can create messages. Example, I'm just giving. So whatever I saw on usage, real time usage.
Hmm.
So what he does is he using subscription and mutations. So what he does is like he captures both this the item creation event. He subscribed to item added event and puts that as part of the Sitecore item in the mutation, and he puts that as message as well. So hey, hi, or whatever, and he populates that. So that is one usage I have seen.
Okay.
But apart from that, in real time, whether we need such a mutation from the front end, maybe there is. I have not seen the need as of now, but maybe a real time that is needed there when we have scenarios like that. But one application which I saw is one of the guy has developed some chart application, simple chart application, where he creates the item here using the mutation and subscribes to that event, and he puts that same reads the event and gets the item and puts that message there in the UI. And it is completely front end. You need not have to write any code in C# or anything. So that is one real-time application I saw, but I think it's a sample chart application.
Yeah. Okay, Mohan. Thank you. Thanks for your session.
Thank you. Any other queries which we have?
I think we can wrap up for now, unless there anything else now.
Okay.
You can, yeah. So you can just show that. Yeah, great. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to Mohan. We've also linked through his LinkedIn profile on the SUG Mumbai page itself. So feel free to reach out to him if you have any questions, and we'll be sharing the recording of this session also soon. So, all right. Thank you so much, Mohan. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Annie. And thank you all for you spent an hour and a half on this session. So hope I added value to this session through this session. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks, Mohan. Thank you.
Thanks, Mohan. Thanks, Mohan. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, Annie.